Hello everybody, welcome to this great pile of muck here in the Greater Kruger National Park. Now we're not entirely sure whether this is the first or second time that you're hearing an introduction from me. If it is the first, welcome. If it is the second, I'm sorry about that. And we are, if it is the first, you will notice that we are 20 minutes late. This is because an asteroid has clearly bashed into 3 or 4 of the satellites that we send the signal out on. And we're just busy building another one. Eugene's making one as we speak, and we'll send a rocket up shortly from the final control, which will hopefully sort out any issues. We also have a couple of radio comms issues, so should your questions not be answered, please do not panic about it. It is not because we dislike you in any shape, way or form. We love to hear from you. Hashtag Safari Live or questions at wildearth.tv if you would like to email us any questions or comments about the goings-on this magnificent piece of wildlife land that we call Djuma. Obviously, great drama today, and that's what I think half of what keeps people coming back to the wilderness and coming back to watch us here at WildEarth. There was a hugely sort of disturbing sight this morning of Madiba, young male leopard, killing a domestic dog or trying to kill a domestic dog and hoisting it into the tree. That domestic dog then, I'll tell you exactly what happened. So the dog was hoisted up the tree, and unfortunately when Brent got there, he thought it of course was an antelope until he very clearly realized that antelopes don't look like that at all, and it was a domestic dog that had got in from the communities. Now that's another discussion in itself. I'm just going to go through what's going to happen with the animals and what we think has happened since you last saw the incident. So Madiba was chased out of the tree. The dog then fell to the ground. We presumed it dead. It wasn't dead. It then got up and ran away. Now the Sabi Sands was called in immediately. Now all dogs that come across the fence line have to be destroyed, and that is because of the possibility that they carry diseases. The Sabi Sands destroyed the dog, and they've taken it away for testing for various diseases, including rabies and various others. Now, we don't know what's going to happen as a result of those tests. We will keep you posted, rest assured. We will hide nothing from you, so please understand that. But at the moment, that's all the information that we have. We're not going to go off to Sindile today, at least Madiba. I think he's had a fairly traumatic time this morning, and I think he needs to be left alone in peace for the rest of the afternoon. So that's the case with Madiba. I'm happy to answer some questions on that, but please, I would ask you to avoid asking any questions about exactly what's going to happen as a result of this, because we really don't know. We're as in the dark about it all as you are. Now, what is interesting, of course, is how on earth 2 domestic dogs came to be on this reserve. As I've said before, on the western boundaries of the Kruger National Park, now we're pretty close to the western boundary, there are 9 million people, most of them living in abject poverty as a result of, well, I mean, we're a poor country at the best of times, and the apartheid legislation and apartheid land policies are still being felt to this day, along with various other socio-economic troubles that are born of our troubled history. Anyway, what that means is that there are hungry people out there. Some of them resort to poaching, hunting, what they would be traditionally called hunting, and unfortunately that often does happen with dogs. I have spoken to many people in those communities, and they only resort to hunting in the wild because they can't afford to buy food. Now this is a difficult thing to understand and difficult to deal with. It's not an easy thing for somebody to come into a potentially dangerous area like this and hunt food for their children and for their wives. But some people have to do it because that's their last option. That's probably how those dogs came to be inside the reserve today. Yes, it's not pleasant, but some people are left with no option. And so specifically, some of the owners of the Sabi Sands, especially the owner of Djuma actually, they pay a huge amount of attention to various community development initiatives that go on in the villages outside the fences of the Kruger National Park and other areas too. Conservation land the world over is highly conflicted. In South Africa, that of course is made worse by our turbulent history, but that's how the dogs came to be here. Anyway, on the positive side of it, of course, the conservation land that this is provides a massive number of jobs. The Sabi Sands itself provides for over 22,000 people as a result of the jobs from ecotourism alone. So that's an excellent way of looking at the positive contribution conservation makes, not only to the wildlife and the wilderness of this area, but of course to the people that live on the villages, with their cultures so rich in history and so vital to our country's heritage and our future. So that's all I have to say about that. If you wish to engage in any way on the topic of the socio-economic troubles, please feel free. Hashtag Safari Live, questions@wildearth.tv. You are on a live game drive. A slightly subdued start, mainly because we're late, and also because of the difficulties of the things that we saw today. And just a quick apology also to anybody who was offended by the sighting. We didn't know that Madiba had made a kill of a dog, but once we were there, you know, it's something that happens, and so we showed it to you. And if you were offended by that, we're very sorry. We certainly is not our intent to offend you. And if you would like to engage on any questions as to why, please feel free. Okay, on we go. Our plan this afternoon was to come to the waterholes and check if we could find some evidence of elephants. Now, I've been to 2 waterholes so far, and I found no elephants. In fact, I find no sign of them either. Simply poor tracking skills of me, and Scott's a bit better on the tracks than I am, but we did manage to find them. Anyway, so we're going to go towards where they were, or where the tracks were, and see if we can't pick up on them. That would be a wonderful thing to see. But otherwise, it is a beautiful 23 degrees or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Marvelous, marvelous color to the sky, glorious blue, and it's just a really nice atmosphere around the bush at the moment. So that's the plan today. You're welcome to it. We love to have you along, and here we go. Just quickly, this sword-like implement that I'm holding in my hand is not in fact a pointing stick, but an aerial. And the handheld radio is what I will be using this afternoon to try and communicate with Nikki and Tara, who are in the final control. I am on Wendy with Bryan, and the other vehicle is supposed to be Scott and Jamie, but Jigger is having a little bit of a, what should we say, she's doing some shoe shopping, getting her shocks fixed up, and so she's not out just yet. Right. On we go. I also love to come past this tree over here because the weavers are supposed to be starting to build, but I haven't seen any new weavers, so I'm looking very much forward to seeing the first yellow weavers of the season. Magnificent day. I do love these deep blue days that follow after a cold front has gone through. It'll be chilly this evening, but it's really nice because we get such incredibly hot September and October days. It's really nice to have some coof. I'm just going to quickly check whether I'm getting any, whether anyone can hear me in the final control. I think they can hear. Oh. That's me signaling them with my thumb. Gosh, it's just amazing how green it is becoming, and I mean, I'm going to blether on about this for a long time, I suspect, but it really is so beautiful to see what was a golden grey, which was also very beautiful, changing to this hundreds of different colors of green, and you can see the leaves sparkling in the sun as we drive towards the sun. So quite apart from finding the animals, the joy of being out here for me lies in watching the changes and in being something of, I guess, not so much an active participant, but an observer of the changes and an absorber of the atmosphere. I really enjoy doing that. And so when I'm in the bush alone, I don't normally rush around trying to find animals. I normally spend quite a lot of time being fairly silent or just walking and not specifically tracking anything. And I find, for me, that's my favorite. Brent Leo Smith, of course, is entirely different. He, being of the highly enthusiastic and irascible man that he is, He loves to go tracking and finding things all the time. Scott's probably somewhere in the middle. And Jamie, of course, is born of a school of great research. And so she takes a great interest in the small details of what goes on here. So it's quite a nice mix within the team of presenters. Our first question, that's a good thing. It means that it's the radios are working vaguely. Lisa, you want to know what happened to the Salati males? I don't know, Lisa. I think they went south. We're not entirely sure. We didn't go and check the southern boundary today because we were wound up with various other things, but nobody found them this morning. So we are sort of heading in the direction where we thought they went south across the property, across the boundary. So that will be the idea also, to see if we can't follow up on the tracks today of where they went. It seems to have been confirmed quite nicely that it was the Salatis, especially we had an excellent confirmation from another ranger who's seen them quite regularly, and that he said there was a whole lot, not a whole lot, he has got pictures of the Salati male missing one of his teeth, and so that definitely is a definitive marker of one of the Salati males, so that's who that is. And wonderful stuff that we had last night with those males, you know, marking territory. And we were wondering how on earth they thought they could possibly be marking territory given the activities of the Birmingham boys and the Matimbas in the area. And we came up with a theory that basically we've had the rain over the course of the last week. We had 30 millimeters. Now that would have washed clean any scent that there was of Matimba marking or Birmingham marking, and because of that they arrived here probably. I don't know why they arrived here, probably got here and thought, well, we'll have this place, it looks quite nice, it doesn't smell of lion anywhere, so I suspect they're marked. And that's what they were doing yesterday, and they were marking with their voices and of course with their urine as well. How long that will last, I don't know. I do know, however, that the Matimbas were found today on Singita, which is now, so they headed a long way south of where their comfort zone is, and now they're heading further to the west, and there were two Majingalan males in the similar vicinity. I think they're sleeping separately at the moment, no conflict as yet, but that should be an interesting one. I think that those two Matimbas, if confronted with two Majingalans, will put up a pretty good fight, but those Majingalan males apparently are pretty good at rallying together. There are 4 of them in total, and if 2 of them roar, the other 2 will come to their aid. Here we have some impala. That does not look gift horses in the mouth, Brian. Mm-hmm. Especially given the luck that the 2 of us have had in the last little while. So it's some lovely male impala, beautifully relaxed bachelor herd. And they're so relaxed, of course, because all the ladies are pregnant, well, most of them. Now, what's interesting is that it's September. Well, that's not interesting in and of itself, of course. It's an inevitability every year. But what is interesting is that there is a second breeding season for impala, and very few people actually know about this. Some of the females will not have been impregnated during the rut in May. And because of that, they do go into a kind of estrus around September, and they breed now, and then the babies are born around March time. Let me just work out on my fingers whether that's correct. October, November, December, January, February, March. Well, Marchish, April, plus minus-ish. Now, very few little lambs will be born then, but there will be 1 or 2. And what's interesting is that I think this has given rise to the ridiculous legend that impala are able to hold their fetuses back in conditions that are adverse, when there's a drought or something like that. Because I think for a long time people didn't realize that impala do have this second mating season. And actually I've seen them mating in September. I've only ever seen it once in May, but I've seen them mate it because normally they do it at night, and in September it tends to be during the day, and so I've seen that. It's not a particularly spectacular affair. Each coital event lasts roughly 0.5 seconds. But there's no mistaking what's going on. All right, so those are the male impala, and they're pretty comfortable with each other. So we're going to go off down here and see if we can't pick up some tracks of those males. Bryan, did you copy that? Apparently there's a spot somewhere on the screen. Bryan will just clean the screen, everybody. And then you saw us stopped at a waterhole there. Now, looking for elephants at a waterhole like that is perhaps not the cleverest idea because it wasn't very clean. And elephants do prefer to drink clean water, and one of the things that was in the water was some red algae. And Penny, you've asked, was it algae? Indeed, it was red algae of some sort. That's all I know about it, I'm afraid. I don't know how it came to be there or anything else about its biology. Microbiology being something of a disinterest of mine when I was at university, but it is an algae of some sort, yeah. We'll just keep an eye out on the road, see if we can't spot any tracks. But I know that this road was driven quite extensively this morning, and I don't think anybody came up with anything. It was quite a cool day, so it's not impossible that there would have been something in the way of lion movement. But as we all know, lions are reluctant movers during the day. Hello, impala. Ah, wonderfully peaceful afternoon this. Now, if you do lose us, I apologize profusely. We are heading towards a place called Twin Dams, which does seem to sometimes cause a problem for recalcitrant Wendy. Lots of impala out today. We'll just have another quick look at them because they are such magnificent antelope. You can see those two young rams having a little bit of a sparring match. Okay, everybody, what I am going to have to do also is turn the game drive communications onto open comms, so you will be able to hear the rattling noise of people speaking on the game drive, so I apologize in advance for that.
We'll find for those impala in the block near the repeater, and then there's a single track between Sullivan Cliff and Rebecca. But nothing was found, and then all blocks.
Beautiful impala, all males, and a little bachelor herd. And there'll be a nursery herd somewhere around here.
Just on the north side of I will check having.
Right, let's press on, Bryan. Wendy purrs to life. It's a bonus. Oops, sorry. Different radio. radio today quickly now and just check that he didn't see any tracks of the salaris. Be great. Mails from hospital this morning.
Negative. Get us off from Scott. They headed north from Gowrie Dam.
Okay, copy that, thanks. Scott or Brent coming?
Anyway, Jack.
Did you guys have any word on the radio today about tracks of those 2 males going north today, over Bubblehook?
Negative. Jamie did check that area extensively. She couldn't find any tracks crossing the boundary.
Ooh.
But the road is quite hard. But they headed northwest. Central junction with
Beautiful wildebeest.
Gowrie cut line. That block between Madiba and Bubblehook cut line last night.
Okay, copy, thanks. So,
Updates for you and all other stations on Sabi Sands procedure when it comes to dogs and the leopard.
a lone wildebeest bull.
Will be darted and inoculated within the next 7 days.
Sorry, just hold on everybody. I just need to quickly confirm something. Confirm that is definitely going to happen.
I've firmly just spoken to Mike. Apparently that is what they've been doing for the last 5 years with all possible animals, as long as they're not showing actual signs of rabies.
Okay, so can I confirm that?
That was from Mike Grover, but he's pretty certain they are not going to destroy that animal.
Right, so I was just getting an update from Brent there, everybody. Sounds like those 2 Salati males went north last night, though we didn't find any tracks going across, but as you may have heard, the road is particularly hard to the north of where we are. The other update from the Sabi Sands is that should there be any disease in that dog that Madiba caught, the good news is that Madiba will then be darted and inoculated, so there will be no need to destroy him, which is a great blessing. We've just had that update now, so we were a little bit worried about that, and I've no doubt that there were lots of you worried there as to what might happen should the dog be found to be rabid. But regardless of that, the leopard will be darted and inoculated if there is some sort of disease threat. So that is excellent news. We can all breathe a heavy sigh of relief. I know I'm going to. Excellent news. Right, let's move on to this lovely wildebeest bull. He is he's a wildebeest bull, of course, obvious by when he wags his tail, and alone, of course, because he doesn't have any lady friends. And the reason he doesn't have any lady friends, of course, is because this is not ideal habitat for a wildebeest at all. It's quite thick. This bull does seem to live around here, and he seems to live a celibate life, and I'm not sure quite why he's chosen this as his territory. All wildebeest bulls have got to have a bit of clearing, so he's got a bit of clearing. He's got a bit of water quite nearby. Twin Dams isn't far away, and he's also got a couple of rubbing posts in the form of trees, which is essential. The one thing he doesn't have, of course, is any wives, and that's not going to be very good for the wildebeest population of this particular area. But he does seem to like this area on his own. Perhaps he's just a loner. He's rather a magnificent fellow, and you'll often find him near or near about some impala, because they're using them, of course, or he is using them for their eyes, their ears, and their sharp noses, so that he too may benefit from their amazingly vigilant ways. Right, on we go. Just spike myself in the eye with this sword-like aerial. there are no further incidents of domestic dog incursion. Wonderful question here about lion roaring, and it's a very interesting one. Sorry, I'm just fighting with this aerial here. There's a slight that I made mention. Sorry, I'm distracted by the number of wires hanging from the person. I made mention earlier of the fact that lions will come to their aid, or coalition males, especially in the Maninga lion, to each other's aid if they get into trouble. And I think it's Joyce is who's asking the question, is will they, or how do they do that? Do they hear the different sounds, and do they make individual roars? Joyce, they absolutely make individual roars. And I was just saying, as we were listening to those lions roaring last night from the fire, I turned to Brent and I said, can you hear? They sound different from the others. And they do. They absolutely sound very different from the Matimbas, who in turn sound very different from the Birminghams. And individually, they can certainly hear each other's different tones. And even we can pick that up. And if you're experienced enough, you can pick up the difference between a male and a female call, which is also very interesting. So Joyce, yes, their voices are very different. So for me, those two Salati males that were calling yesterday tended to have, both of them seem to have much more gravelly voices than the Birminghams. It might be an age thing as well, but they've definitely got more gravelly, more kind of sawing sound. There was a smoothness to the roaring that I heard around the Birmingham boys. And then the noise of the Matimba male that I had roaring right next to the car just seemed to be a lot deeper, had a lot more kind of bassy tones to it. Absolutely, they sound different. And if you were to hear them, 3 different lions from 3 different coalitions calling in the same place next to you, you'd be able to hear the difference immediately like that. And also, if you heard female and male standing next to each other, you'd be able to hear the difference. Great question. And then I'm sure you can say the same for leopards as well, but I would be a bit nervous to try and distinguish the two. You can definitely hear the difference between a male and a female, but because leopards we don't hear them calling as much. I'm sure you can tell the difference. They can definitely tell the difference, but I certainly wouldn't like to put my money on being able to hear the difference, but I'm almost 100% sure that the leopards themselves can hear a difference. Obviously have an enormous array of sounds that they make, and they make different sounds for different reasons. And one of the things that we listen to a lot of, or try and hear, are alarm calls from things like squirrels and mongoose and birds and impala, and even duiker don't seem to do it much. Steenbok don't either, but certainly wildebeest do, and kudu. All the tragolaphids, the kudu, the nyala and the bushbuck make barking sounds, and squirrels make chirruping sounds, and they sound like birds if you don't know what the sound is. And then the dwarf mongoose make the noise that gives them their onomatopoeic Shangaan name of Matsigitoch. They make a sort of squeaking sound that sounds a little bit like Matsigitoch, Matsigitoch, Matsigitoch. And that's where they get their Shangaan name from. So lots of different kinds of calls that different animals can definitely interpret in different ways. Now, whether I'm pretty sure I definitely can't tell the difference between two dwarf mongoose calling, but I can absolutely be sure that they can hear the difference between individual calls. They have different voices in the same way that you and I have different voices. And then, of course, you get the other end of the scale, where you've got things that make different alarm calls for different animals. Now, I think this happens more than we realize it does. In monkeys, certainly we know that they make at least 3 different kinds of alarm calls. I can't hear the difference, but researchers into monkeys can definitely hear the difference with a naked ear, if you like. And so they'll make a call for a snake, which will result in the troop rushing up the tree. They'll make a call for an eagle, which will result in the troop rushing down to the middle of the tree so that the eagle doesn't come and whip them out. And they'll also make a call for something like a leopard, which will just generally cause mass panic and make them rush to the top of the tree as fast as possible. So there's almost a language that goes on around monkeys and their alarm calls. I suspect you'll find that it becomes slightly less sophisticated the further down, or the less primate-like the animals become, but I'm pretty sure that there's different kinds of alarm calls for different kinds of threats. Because if you're a mongoose and you see a snake, to make the same call as if you see an eagle, for example, would probably result in things being quite difficult and making the alarm call actually more dangerous than it was helpful. From Ashley, and I am going to demonstrate this to you, Ashley, rather than blether away. I'm just going to find an appropriate spot. Stand by, Ashley, I'm going to get back to you now. Try not to be run off the road, of course. Hello?
Fancy meeting you, Archer.
Yes, it's astonishing, isn't it?
Where you going? I thought you were checking up for those diesel alarms.
Well, I checked the south there, but then I didn't realise that they'd gone north. Yes.
The tracks crossing.
We didn't find any. No. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah.
I don't know if Tex got anything this morning.
No, I don't think he did. Yeah.
Marvellous.
Marvellous.
Chasing
Have a good
tails,
drive.
chasing tails.
Chasing tails. That was Craig, everyone. So, where was I? Oh, yes, Ashley. Derby. I've never been to Derby, Ashley, but I will be in the United Kingdom next week, actually. Right, we're going to jump out here and we're going to do a little experiment. Bryan, stand by. I'm leaving the vehicle, exiting, but I shall return shortly. Stand by. Right, now, here we have 2 different grass species. Now, Ashley, your question was basically, do we have, you say, you can see the flush of green, and is it nutritious, and are the animals starting to enjoy the nutrition from the different greenness that there is around the place, or do we need more rain? Actually, absolutely, they are already starting to derive huge nutrition. How a grass plant works, Bryan, I'm going to pop it over here if that suits you. Was that into the sun? Is that terrible?
Perfect, that's perfect.
Okay. So there is a very nice example of a grass plant that has been grazed. Now, a grass plant has very shallow adventitious roots. What that means is that it doesn't have a tap root. Okay? And this white bit here, this fat piece here, is where a grass stores the nutrients that it needs to sprout once the rain begins. So during the height of the dry season, you will see things like warthogs digging up this piece, and it's called a rhizome. This piece is called a rhizome, and it's full of nutrients and carbohydrates and things like that, and that's where things get stored. So when the rain comes and these adventitious roots have got sufficient or can draw water from the surface, what happens is that the nutrient base here sends out these leaves, and this is a new leaf here, right? And that new leaf is now filled with nutrition, and it's also going to produce nutrition. So it's going to photosynthesize, it's probably photosynthesizing as we speak, and it's going to send the photosynthates or carbohydrates that it makes down into the rhizome, and that's where they're going to live. But the leaves themselves are extremely nutritious. Now this one comes from a termite, it comes from away from the termite mound, and this one here comes from the termite mound, and Bryan and I are now going to sample whether we can taste the difference between that is on a termite mound and that is not. There you are, Bryan.
Thank you, sir.
There is your piece. That is your termite mound piece. And the reason we're doing the difference is because the soil on a termite mound is much more nutritious than the soil away from a termite mound because of the termite's dung. That's the termite mound grass. It has already been grazed, so Ashley, you can see that it's already being eaten. Right, Bryan, there's the non-termite mound grass.
Thank you.
See if you can taste the difference. You can, hey?
Yeah, you can.
It's not as good.
No, it's a lot more
Bland. Yeah. There we go. That's actually fascinating. I didn't know if that would work or not. I've never done it before. So, termite mound grass. You can see it's been quite heavily grazed already. So actually, animals are already selecting for the grass that is on the termite mounds and the greener stuff. And then this one away from the termite mound, you can see it's not growing nearly as thickly, A, and B, you can see that, or you can taste that it doesn't taste quite as good. Good, I'm glad we've done that little experiment. Let us continue. And the reason we did this test, of course, was because a little while back we saw some zebras that climbed up onto the top of a termite mound. And I mean, they were way up on top, and I mean, they're not climbing animals, zebras, they're not designed to climb. But they'd made the effort to get right up on top there because that grass tastes so much better because of the nutrition. So I said we'd give it a test, and we now have. Righty-ho. United Kingdom, you say that when I come next week I can come and have some tea and chalky biscuits with you. Well, that'll be lovely, thank you very much. I'll be there on Monday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then Stephanie in Switzerland, you would like to see some wildflowers, and you like wildflowers, and you say if there are any, can we show them to you? Absolutely we can, if we can find any. I don't, one or two, here's one right now. What a stroke of luck. Can you see? Is this a decent, is this okay for you? So that, everybody, or Stephanie specifically, is called a squill. Let me point at it with this rapier-like. There we go. No, no, I can't do
There
it.
we go. Almost there we go.
No, no, I had it. No. I'm going to get out. There it is. And this is called a squill. Now, we get various different kinds of squills, S-Q-U-I-L-L, and I don't know which kind this is. I can tell you, however, that Scott Dyson harvested one the other day, well, with my help, and it's got a little bulb underneath it. He then went and planted it, of course, and it's growing very happily outside his shower. I don't know what that says about his shower, but it is growing very happily there, and it's closely related to something called a tall white squill, which is a much taller one, and they'll come a bit later in the season. But there's a bulb underneath there, and some very pretty little white flowers, which you can probably see just glowing a little bit in the sun. I'm not going to pull it out of the ground for you, Stephanie, which I'm sure you will appreciate. So that's the only kind of proper wildflower that I've seen, or herbaceous wildflower. There are quite a few flowers in the trees at the moment. So a couple in the combretums, I know they're flowering. Some of the knobthorns have started to flower. I thought they'd flower a lot more early than they have. But if we do see some, Stephanie, I will be sure to show them to you. About whether the cameramen worry about what I'm going to make them eat when they get on the back of the vehicle with me. I think I'm going to deflect that one to Bryan. Bryan, do you live in a great state of fear as to what I'm going to feed you?
I'm terrified.
There we go, Connie.
On a daily basis.
They're terrified on a daily basis. I think Bryan's joking. I hope he is. He might not be. I'm not sure.
I'm joking. I am joking.
Phew.
Lucky this time.
Yes, thank you. Hoping desperately for some lion tracks. So, quite an interesting question here from Sandy. Who would I rather see take over Djuma in terms of the lions? Would I rather it was the Birmingham boys, or would I rather it was the Salatis? Sandy, you seem to want the Birmingham boys to take over because they're young and there are 5 of them, and so the chances of there being another takeover are obviously reduced. I think I would tend towards that. I don't believe that those Salatis are in particularly good shape, especially the one who's got a very damaged rear hip. I don't know why they aren't territorial. If they've come into this area, it strikes me that they've either deciding that they want to push their territory out and make it a bit larger, which is possible, or that they've been thrown out by some other males. So I'm not sure that I'd want them to take over, but why don't you send us your comments on who you would like to take over, the Salatis or the Birmingham boys, #Safari Live, questions at wildearth.tv, and we'll get some consensus. And then of course we'll send a memo out to the Lions and tell them that our viewers would rather, one of them disappear and the other take over. Certainly the Birmingham boys, apart from their seemingly insatiable need to kill lionesses, they would logically offer the more long-term, better long-term prospects for this area. we're driving along hoping desperately to find some tracks of an animal or two. Lewis in Virginia, you want to know if animals have got taste buds like ours. I don't think they're exactly like ours. Certainly they can taste though. I don't think they interpret the taste in the same way though. So while taste for us is a pleasant and unpleasant thing, you know, lions will eat the most rancid, foul smelling meat, and they have very sensitive noses and olfactory senses, but they don't seem to mind that kind of foul stink. They would just go right ahead and eat it. But so you're asking basically as a function of or as a result of the fact that Bryan and I tasted those two different grasses, and you want to know, would animals be able to taste the difference? I'm sure they can, you know. It probably is a different interpretation, but definitely one was profoundly sweeter than the other. And we know that, oh, look at that, there's a giraffe. 2 giraffes. And I've seen these 3 before, you know. So Lewis, absolutely, I think they can taste the difference, and I think they interpret that as what's being better for them and what isn't. There are 3 beautiful giraffe, 1 large bull, 2 cows. What a lovely, peaceful sighting this is. You can see the bull immediately by his vast size, and they are, you don't notice it so much when you see them individually. When you see them on their own, you don't notice the incredible size difference between the bulls and the cows, but there's no question that there is a huge difference. You can also see, of course, the fact that his horns are bald at the top, and the females tend to have hair on their horns.
Yari, small from Yari at Twin Dams. Also, there's one in Marabou, Steve in the mud. There's a couple of Marabou storks fishing at Gowrie Dam. And
beautiful giraffe sighting. And there's the most wonderful atmosphere here, and that's because the air is so clear after that cold front, and that's why the colors are just so much in much sharper relief than they might be normally. I think that bull is up to, well, not up to no good at all, but he has designs on those 2 ladies. We have seen a couple of different pairs of bulls harassing cows at this time of the year, and I think while they're not specifically seasonal breeders, they will mate now because they have a gestation period of just over a year. So were they to breed now, they'd have a baby born in November, which of course is traditionally when we would have some pretty good rains. So I suspect that's why a lot of these females are probably coming into estrus now, and that's why the bulls are paying them such close attention. You don't see this behavior normally between giraffes. You don't see a bull standing just staring longingly after 2 cows. Normally they keep themselves fairly separate, but this bull can whiff something on the air, and that will be a pheromone that the females are producing, telling him that they're either near to or are in already estrus. And I think, you know, a giraffe can live to about 20 years, maybe up to 25 in good conditions, and they'll be sexually mature probably at around 4. But a bull, as with most of the species out here, unless, you know, sexual maturity often comes a long time before they're actually able to mate. So I suspect a bull that's 4 years old, while physically capable, will have to fight off the attentions of much bigger, stronger bulls in order to get a mating opportunity. But it's not impossible that from 4 they could mate, but I think you'll find it's probably not before they're 6, 7 or 8 even. That is That is conjecture. I'm not sure I'm for 100% certain. We'll just go a little bit further down this clearing. Just have a last look at him. There's also a bird here that I want to show you. I think probably some of the ornithologists or ornithologically minded will enjoy. Now, for a long time they thought giraffe was silent, and certainly if you watch them, that's definitely the impression you get, that they are entirely silent. I've heard a female giraffe shouting at predators. They do make a kind of angry hissing sound, but also they're apparently capable of similar sort of communication as elephants. So they do apparently make infrasonic sounds that are too low for us to hear. I find that very interesting. All right, Bryan, let's just nip forward and see if this bird is still here. I saw him here today, and I know somebody else has pointed him out before. It would be nice to just see him again. He's called a Senegal lapwing. Used to be known as a lesser black-winged plover, now a Senegal lapwing. Where is he? Try and look for him on the floor so that I may point at him with my long pointer. His call is peep peep, peep peep, peep peep, peep peep. No, he's not here today, of course. Why would he be? Seen him every day. I haven't been live. But not today. Beastly little bird. Continue up this road. I think that our radio communications are not good in this particular part of the reserve, so if I don't answer your questions, it's not because I'm being rude, I promise. We say new name and old name with birds quite a lot, and many of the birds don't have the same names as they did when I started learning about them. But of course the change took place almost, in fact more than 10 years ago. And the reason that some of the birds have changed names, so for example the grey go-away bird used to be the grey lory, the Senegal lapwing used to be the lesser black-winged plover, various others have changed too. And that is simply because the names had to be brought in line with those that occur in East Africa as well. So a lot of the same birds occur in East Africa that occur here, but for a long while they had different names, which doesn't make any sense if it's exactly the same bird. So that's why over here, well, something like a lory, for example, lory is an Afrikaans word. And obviously they don't speak Afrikaans in Kenya and Tanzania, they only speak it up here. And so the lories, except for the grey go-away bird, became taracos, which is a more universally acceptable or accepted name. And that's why they changed. But we still, I still get confused with some of the new names, especially with the littler birds like the flycatchers. They all changed, a lot of them changed. Difficult to keep up with exactly what's going on. No sign of those lions yet, but we have got Brent and Scott on foot trying to find them. Not Scott, Brent and Jean-Dre, I think, are on foot around this area, seeing if they can't find where those lions went. substantial portion of Djuma so far, and I really would like to see a few elephants today. Research from Raisa in Finland, who said that she's researched a couple of things on taste buds, and apparently I forget what the first one was, but secondly, carnivores are 450 taste buds, which sounds like quite a lot, until you hear that human beings have got 10,000. 10,000 we have, and apparently bovines, I can't get the bovine one. So bovines are even more sensitive than we are. They've got 20,000 taste buds, so they can definitely taste the difference between a termite mound grass and a non-termite mound grass. But the poultry 450 that a carnivore has got makes enormous sense when you consider the foulness that they sometimes subject themselves to eating. I remember the first time I saw a dog eating its own dung, and I thought to myself, gosh, I don't think that thing can taste like I can taste. And obviously hyenas and lions and all sorts of other animals have to eat rotting and rotten flesh. So obviously the 450 taste buds that they have doesn't make them balk at the sign or the thought of eating rotting flesh. I think we'll go a little bit further forward into the next clearing, and then we're going to stop and have a listen and see what we can hear. Always a good idea to stop and listen. Lovely clearing up ahead that's turning greener and greener and greener by the day. Hi, Shifam Banjan. Mita kumain we. Kumbesana ya jabzana huti. Right, good news everybody. The time has come for you to leave me briefly away from this sword-like radio that is well, providing quite good communications, I think, today. Jigger is up and running, and my almost namesake Jamie is with her, and I will see you a little bit later.
So, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. Now, Jigger's had a little bit of a delayed start, but it also comes out with a brand new set of shock absorbers. And we have a big thank you to say to Opar, who many of you will remember had his television debut about a week ago when he was trying desperately to fix Wendy. Now, for those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie, and we have Scott as a special appearance as the cameraman once again. Now, I know that Linda and Sue were wondering if we've had any feedback from the Arethusa guides, and for those of you who might be joining us and aren't sure what was going on, apparently there was an enormous herd of elephants that was seen on the Arethusa Dam camera last night, and they went through into the lodge, and it sounds like they may have been causing a little bit of havoc on that side. I'm not sure what the staff of Arethusa woke up to this morning, but it does sound like there was a bit of chaos there. Now, just in terms of my plans for this afternoon, to let you know it's my personal decision, but I know that many of the other guides and presenters agree. We will not be following up on Madiba. We don't want to go and disturb him in any way. It's been something of a rough morning for him, and the Sabi Sands did have to chase him away from the kill that he had, or the dog that he'd taken up the tree. And I feel that he's had enough sort of interference from people this morning, so I'm going to leave him in peace for this afternoon. We can always follow up with him tomorrow when he's had time to recover from his ordeal. We had a wonderful herd of elephants this morning on the sunrise safari, with 2 young bulls keeping us very entertained. And now with the story of the elephants who've made their way into Arathusa Lodge, I thought I might finish the story that I started this morning, but I don't think ever had the chance to finish. Now, I was describing the camp that I used to work at, and it had an elephant wire at head height, not electrified or anything like that, just with pieces of metal attached to it, that whenever the elephants bumped into it, it made a bit of a noise and scared them away and stopped them from coming into the garden. Now, it worked fairly well for the breeding herds, but unfortunately not always so well for the bulls. And we had this beautiful fever tree, which is a big green thorn tree that we get around here. The bark is a bright greeny yellow, and that served as our Christmas tree for my first year working there. It was a really beautiful. We hung all of the Christmas baubles up from there and decorated it with tinsel, and it was definitely my favorite tree in the garden. And we came by the one day, and an elephant bull called Riffraff had come in and pushed it over. The second time it happened, we managed to prop it up the first time and save it, but the second time it happened, it was well and truly bent double. We managed to hook it up to 2 tow ropes with 2 different vehicles pulling in opposite directions, not opposite directions, but at 90 degrees. We managed to get it upright, propped it up, and I wrapped the parts that he'd ring-barked in foil, so it pulled the bark away from some of it. And we desperately waited for about 6 months, refusing to cut this tree down because I was determined it was going to survive. And 6 months later, when it was very clearly turned into firewood, I had to declare that it was probably past redemption, and we cut it down. But I was very, very sad to see that. Have we got hiding up here? Aha! Now this, I believe, was Brent's mystery bird from this morning, where originally he wanted to do a bit of a guessing quiz as to what it might be. But unfortunately, I didn't realize that was his plan, and I gave the game away. It's a bit of a funny one. It's one of those tricky things about raptors, is usually when they are young, it can take them up to 8 years for some of the different bird species to reach their adult plumage, or to get their adult plumage. And just like the Batelea, this particular juvenile looks completely different from what the adults look like. A little bit scraggly, but beautifully highlighted in the afternoon sun. And I'm not going to leave you guessing, because I believe that some of you will have been watching the sunrise safari, but for those of you who weren't, this is a juvenile fish eagle. We're right next to the Gowrie Dam. Some of you might be able to see us on the dam camera, but just at the back. I'm just going to find a nice picture for you. We very often hear the breeding pair that lives around here, and they've had a field day over the last 2 or so months as the dam has got smaller and smaller and the catfish have become easier and easier to catch. We've seen a lot of them flying past with big barbel in their claws. This is the first time I've seen this juvenile. Scott, I don't know, have you seen him before?
I've seen one at Treehouse Dam
Okay,
about 2
maybe
weeks ago.
maybe he's coming through from that side. We very often hear them calling from our camp at Ingers. Now in this particular case, I mentioned that some raptors can take 7 or 8 years to gain their adult plumage. In the case of the fish eagle, it doesn't take them quite as long. It takes them between 4 and 5 years to take on that beautiful tan and white and black, very striking bird. While I'm sitting nice and quietly, you can also hear the sort of ghostly whistle of a grey-headed bush shrike. Now in Afrikaans, that's a bird, the name of that bird is a spookvoël, or a ghost bird, just because so often you just get that very low, haunting whistle. You hardly ever see them. They're quite shy. They tuck themselves away in the thick vegetation around drainage lines. Now. Now it looks as though you've got one of the adult fish eagles at the top of the tree. Surveying the dam. It's often to my right. There we go. You just see that shock of white is what really highlights him. It shows up against the green of the tree. He's going to perch up there until he sees a nice fishing opportunity. And it's extraordinary to see the strength and dexterity these birds display when they do fly down and catch the fish that are in these dams. Now, I've watched them fly off with one, and sometimes they have the most enormous catfish, and you have to marvel at their strength to actually lift it up and fly with it, especially when it's still flapping around. And then they go and they find a perch, and they grip onto the perch with, or the branch that they're sitting on, with one foot, and then grip the fish with the other. Sometimes a little bit unstable and wobbling around a little bit. Now I can't see them from the vantage point that I'm at, but I believe there are some Marabou storks hanging around the Djuma Dam. I'm going to head around and have a look at them now in just a few moments. But I wonder if this fish eagle feels a little bit put out by their unusual presence here. They are very big, very powerful birds. And although they are carrion eaters, they can also fish with those long stabbing beaks. I've got some pictures to show you just to give you a clearer indication of the comparison between the juvenile and then the sub-adult fish eagle, which I think we're kind of looking at the variant between, or the sort of in-between part between juvenile and sub-adult, and then the adult fish eagle. Just have a look here. I'm actually going to duck my head out of the... And there we go, we've got the adult here. You can see the white plumage. That's what we're seeing that shows up so clearly in the tree. And then just to the right of that is the sub-adult coloring, which is pretty much the bird that we're looking at, that we started looking at in front of us. And then the sort of rather tatty, scruffy juvenile. Very beautiful bird, and one of the calls that is so distinctly African. Beautiful. Well spotted, Scott. Let's head down to the dam and see if we can see those Marabou storks, if they're still hanging around. Now, I saw a picture that one of the viewers had put up earlier of one of the Marabou storks with a very, very swollen looking crop. And I want to go and see if it's still hanging around and possibly chat a little bit about the meal that might have caused that. Just to keep you all updated on the movements of those two males who made their way into Djuma yesterday and who Scott was with last night as they moved through and were calling, and that we suspect are the Salati males. I've just heard an update from Craig on the radio. It seems as though they have definitely crossed into Buffelshoek. I don't think they have been found yet, but I know that the guides are following up on across the Buffelshoek cut line to the north. Here we have the 4 Marabou storks that have been hanging around today and yesterday. And Shar, you picked up on the fact that one of them has a very swollen crop. It almost looks as though there's a fish there. And apparently that was the case yesterday as well. I'm just looking, I'm assuming it is the one with its back turned. I still haven't, the other 3 seem to have fairly normal sized crops. There we go. Does seem to be rather swollen. I'm not too sure, Scott. I've never seen one with a crop that's swollen. Have you?
My filing cabinet with all this information is closed, Jamie.
Got it.
But there's something about it. I'm not sure if it's maybe to do with breeding or some kind of a display. I mean, usually it would be for food.
Yeah, I would.
But that looks like it's filled with liquid.
It does look like it's filled with liquid. There's no, we've got it almost perfectly backlit at times. And you can actually see the light glowing through it, and there doesn't seem to be anything solid in there. It is, of course, very hard to tell. Now, obviously, typically a crop for a bird, they can store big meals. And I am wondering what it is. Maybe you guys have some idea that Scott and myself haven't thought of. And if you do know anything about this swollen crop on the Marabou stork, you can let us know on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Very, very interesting. I'm just going to have a look in my book quickly and see if I can pick up anything in there. Now, my book is telling me that a pendulous throat pouch is typical in Marabou storks. So it is just part of the way, it's probably a fully grown adult. It's just part of the way that he's structured. Adult breeding male. And that would be my guess. None of the others have it, but it might be because they are a little bit younger and a little bit more immature. I'll say a big welcome to Ian, who is one of our new viewers, as well as a big thank you to him for providing an answer to our question of the pendulous throat pouch. And Ian tells us that it's used as part of thermoregulation, so to help the bird cool itself down. And that makes total sense to me because it increases surface area, and the skin is probably quite thin and filled with capillaries, similar to the way that elephants might use their ears. The other thing, of course, that many storks in this area are famous for, in terms of thermoregulation, is defecating on their legs to help with cooling and evaporation. Just helps to keep them cool, and obviously those legs are the most exposed part of them. And although we do typically see them in dams, you can see them around kills far away from water, and on days when it reaches 40 degrees or 45 degrees, they need a little bit of extra help. They do have their own special kind of grace in quite an ugly way. I wouldn't say they're the most attractive of birds. Also a special style of walking that I believe gives them the nickname the Undertaker bird. Now these are the largest storks that we get in this area, and I mentioned earlier that the fish eagle might be feeling a little bit put out by their presence. And Dennis in Massachusetts, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You've said that you've seen or heard of fish eagles preying on flamingos and assumed that maybe they would be bold enough to steal fish from the Marabous. And I wouldn't be surprised, I think it was with Scott actually, that the fish eagle swooped in and stole a tilapia kill from one of the saddle-billed storks, who were quite often seen around this dam, and snatched it right away from him and then promptly dropped it in the pond. It was actually an amazing sighting. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was such a surprise.
That was so cool.
We had no idea the fish eagle was here.
Yeah, so I definitely wouldn't put it past a sneaky fish eagle. And they've definitely got a little bit of speed over these big Marabou storks. I wouldn't call them clumsy, but they're definitely not as mobile as a fish eagle would be. They haven't much interest in the barbel though, that I've seen. I don't know if any of the viewers have seen them catching any.
Look there, Jamie.
Dribbling.
Yeah.
He's having a bit of a drink there. Did it drink water or did it just expel that?
I'm not sure if it managed to drink there. I don't think it would have been. I think it
No.
may have expelled it out of the pouch.
That was interesting. So the stork on the left, all of a sudden there was a fountain of water coming from its mouth. And I know that a lot of birds will use the crop to store liquid and then regurgitate it to their chicks if their nests are built far away from access to water. So that's one extra use of that rather large crop that these Marabou storks have. Oh, and you could even hear his bill snap there as he shook his head. That was very cool. And again, getting liquid out. I'm trying to work out in my own head what that was about and why it expelled water like that now. Very interesting. But Deborah, you've suggested that that breeding pouch could be, that large crop pouch could be a breeding pouch as a way of displaying for potential mates. And I think that is a possibility. The stork with that pendulous pouch is definitely the largest of the four that are around here. It's really nice to see Marabou storks. I haven't seen them in quite a long time. And the viewers today are proving to be a wealth of information, as of course you always are. And Bob G, on the subject of the pendulous pouch, has told us that it is connected to one of the stork's nostrils, and it's used as a sort of a resonance device in creating sounds that are then used as part of the breeding rituals to help them court their mates. And thank you very much for that, Bob. It's really interesting information. I've definitely learned something new today. That's amazing. I love the idea of them using that as a resonance chamber. While we're sitting observing some of the large daytime birds that we've seen at the dam, there is a camera. For those of you who don't know, there is a live camera that operates 24 hours a day over this waterhole and is controlled by a very dedicated group of zoomies. You can change its direction and zoom in when there's something fascinating to see, and it also comes with a microphone. Now Lewis has picked up on a bird call that he describes as a sonar ping, and was wondering if we could tell him what it is. Now my suspicion would be that it was a scops owl. If it sounds, Lewis, if it sounds like sort of a brr, brr sound, and there are probably about 3 of them living up at Quarantine. We hear them every single night. And I know that there's quite a few of us who are desperate to find one live. Scott, I think we should do that this evening as the sun goes down. We'll go find that scops owl.
Sounds good.
Yeah, no, we've definitely been aiming to show you guys. It's the smallest little owl that we get out here. And Lewis, if I had to take a shot in the dark, that would be mine. I'm trying to think what other... The thickneys, so the other nocturnal species of bird around here, they don't really sound like sonar pings. Their calls are too often and too irregular. Definitely wouldn't be a Verreaux's, that's a very deep, so a Verreaux's eagle owl is out. Definitely isn't a barn owl because that's a scream and a screech. And it isn't a pearl-spotted owl because they do a beautiful little musical descent of whistles. So not one constant sound. And that would be my guess. Scott, I don't know if you have any.
No.
No, I think Scops owl is probably the most likely. And I would very much like to find one of those.
A Mozambican nightjar makes a long... But I haven't heard them yet.
I haven't heard them yet.
But that's not really a sonar ping.
No, that's just a constant trill. Very interesting. So in case we don't find it, in case we do not find it for you, Lewis, this afternoon, I'm going to show you a picture of what one looks like. Now, Lewis, that is what we suspect your sonar ping bird is. It's a tiny, tiny little owl that always looks particularly grumpy and displeased to see whoever happens to be looking at it. But that is the bird that we're talking about, the pearl-spotted owl. This is the most common coloring. You also get a slightly more brown version. And if I were to... This is the other little owl that we get, pearl-spotted owlet. Ever so slightly bigger, but ever so slightly. And easily told apart from the Scops owl. First of all, it doesn't have the little ear tufts, which are not actually ears, but they are feather tufts. And then it's also got these cute little spots on the back of its head. And then the other little owl, which is even bigger still, is the African barred owlet, which the only other one you could confuse it with is the pearl-spotted owl, because it doesn't have the tufts like the Scops owl. But it is slightly bigger still, and the chest barring is a little bit darker, and it doesn't have those eye patches on the back. So those are the three tiny owls. I know that we've showed both African barred owlets and pearl-spotted owlets on live. I don't think we've managed to get a Scops yet, so we'll have a bit of a look this afternoon or this evening. They are crepuscular, which means that they come out during the sort of sunset time and early morning, and we'll get to start to hear them call. We'll try and make it back to quarantine and see if we can track them down and find them for you. And just to give you a rough idea as to size, I'd say probably maybe that big. They are tiny, tiny little owls. Really, really cute. And made even cuter by their grumpy expressions. And I think our Marabou storks have settled down, and we have explained, or at least had various theories, as to the large crop pouch. The pendulous pouch, I love that. It's a beautiful illustration. Wonderfully described by the author of my bird book. And hopefully they will stick around for a little bit longer over the next few days, and we'll get to observe their behavior. Now, this is fairly unusual for me, at least, in my time at WildEarth. I haven't often seen Marabou storks around here, and nature is beautiful, is really, really enjoying their presence, and was wondering if I could tell them a little bit more about them, as how long they live and how many chicks can they have. Now, I'd have to double check my research. I would say that there is only one chick. They probably lay 2 eggs, as is quite common with most of the larger bird species, especially the birds of prey and the carnivore species. I would say that they have laid 2 eggs, but that one will hatch first, and the second one will either be outcompeted completely by its older sibling, or in some cases even picked and bullied to the point that it dies. I would say they only raise one chick at a time. I could be wrong about that, but that would be my guess. And then in terms of how long they live or what their lifespan is, I'm guessing they are fairly long-lived birds. I would even put it in the region of somewhere 15. Scott, I don't know if you know exactly, but I'm guessing I would say 15 or so, maybe even older. 25 years quite easily. And although these are storks, they are very large and probably quite long-lived birds. That would be my guess, but I'm sure there are many of you out there who do know the answer to that. And as always, you can send that through to #SafariLive on Twitter. Ian tells me that there was a case in Parfuri of a fish eagle catching a young baboon. So very, very opportunistic bird. And even though their name is fish eagle, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are just stuck catching fish, although that is what they are specially adapted for. Now, from the catfish in the mud at Gowrie Dam to a rather larger animal species, I believe that James has a hippo at Twin Dams, which is certainly a first for me. So we'll head across to him and catch up with you a little bit later.
Good afternoon again, everybody. Welcome back to Wendy, where I am sitting at Twin Dams, but I am not alone. There is a hippopotamus here in conditions that I would never have thought possible. It's lying in the mud, and initially I thought was possibly stuck, but doesn't, according to Tex, whose voice you can probably hear from the other side, it isn't. He reckons that it's just come here to rest up and stay cool and parasite free here in the mud. Now, 2 days ago, Bryan and I were on drive searching the I nearly said wastelands, but searching the cold front strewn areas of Djuma, and we didn't find anything, except we did go past a pan on Hyena Road, which is not too far from here, and there was a hippo lying in a very tiny little pan, roughly the same size as the one that I did my first introduction on at 3 o'clock today, 3:30, and I think it's probably the same hippo. It'll be an non-territorial bull who's been chased out of a pod by the dominant bull, and he'll be looking to try and find some kind of solace here where he can find a bit of water. Now, having said that, there was a bit of movement there, and it didn't exactly look like it was a movement that made you think the hippo could get out of that mud. And I will tell you that I have walked through that mud, of course, in an attempt to catch a catfish, failing, naturally, and it's very deep and very sticky. And animals do get mired in the mud sometimes. Elephants, especially in some areas where there's severe water stress, will get stuck in the mud. But I'm not sure what's going on with this hippo. Because hippo are so experienced in the water, you'd be surprised, I think, to find a hippo that was stuck in the mud. So I don't really know. Remember, hippo are very sensitive to the sun, and while it's been a fairly cool day, there hasn't been much cloud about, and so the sun has shone for most of the day, and so hippos will always seek to try and find some kind of escape from the harsh rays of the sun. And I must say, just on that topic, I was in Greece a little while back, and it was amazing to me how, even though I often forgot to put on any sunscreen, the sun there and in Europe, possibly in North America as well, just didn't seem to have the same effect as it does here at the latitude that we are here in the Lowveld and possibly in Africa. It's just much harsher. So for those of you who haven't been out here and experienced a summer sun, although the temperature is about, you know, I mean, the temperature feels the same, 34 degrees wherever you are in the world. The sun does tend to feel a lot harsher out here than it does at more northerly climes. Beautiful light starting to fall on the Lowveld now as the sun begins to sink down below the Drakensberg, and quite unusually chilly. I think we're still experiencing the tail end of that cold front. So I would say a young bull, and it looks to me like he's going to sleep, which is nice for him. It's good to have an afternoon nap, don't you think, Bryan? Yes, his eyes are drooping, exhausted after a day of lying in the mud. This, of course, gave rise to the Flanders and Swan song, Mud, Glorious Mud. I think this should probably also conclusively show. Sorry everybody, I'm just having a little bit of radio trouble here. Excuse me 1 second. Was that for me? Beautiful atmosphere. There's the golden setting sun, which we'll show you just now. There's this hippo and the last calling of a number of daytime birds. Some doves. Quite a lot of quietness actually. A couple of crickets are starting to call. And of course what we must listen out for is what Jamie has challenged us with. She said we're going to try and find a Scops owl live, and the challenge is to be the first person to find a live Scops owl. Scops owl, of course, is tremendously camouflaged. Bryan, are you wanting to show the sun or my mug? Oh, you're coming for me. Sorry about that. I was being athletic there, getting out of the way, but there is the sun just in front of me that is about to set over the beautiful African horizon. Something I never ever get sick of, I must say. I find it inspirational every time I see it. Isn't that gorgeous? Now, if you're clever enough, you can have 2 or 3 sunsets. You start off low down like we are now, and you go up a bit and you can have another one, and then right to the far western end of the property, and you can watch it sinking over the Drakensberg. I'm not convinced myself that this hippo isn't stuck, so it will be interesting to see tomorrow whether he is still here or not. But we shouldn't drive down that way. Bryan, what do you think? We'll just drive around next to the water and see if we can't get a better idea. Hold on tight, everyone. We're about to go plummeting off this wall. Oh, there's an oxpecker on him, you see that? There's an oxpecker reclining gently on his head. There he is, a red-billed oxpecker looking for ticks. And of course, big thing about oxpeckers is that they don't have ticks. They don't eat ticks because they like ticks. They eat ticks because they like blood. And a couple of you who watch the Djuma Dam cam have made the comment that there has been a hippo at the Djuma waterhole the last few nights. Chamala, apparently, I think that's how we say your name. And Chris, you say there was a hippo there, and perhaps it was the same one. I think it may well be the same one. You know, we find their tracks going up and down the road between the two waterholes quite a lot. One of them, the road is called Twin Dams Road, and so often we do see that. So I think we'll sit with him for another few minutes and then we'll press on and see what else we can see. But just to give you an idea of hippo social structure and how a young bull like this eventually becomes a big breeding bull that will supply new hippos to the population. Basically, he will have to achieve full size. Now, he's probably about 2/3 full big bull size. Big bull weighs as much as a white rhino, so they weigh up to 2,500 kilograms, which is about 6,500 pounds, so enormous animals. And he at this stage will be just, there's so many mammals that go through this stage of loneliness as young males trying to gain their full size, and eventually he will go off and take a pod of his own and hopefully maintain a territory in a pristine area like the Sand River. That's good hippo territory because it doesn't dry out much, and he'll then have some babies of his own. And they're not seasonal breeders at all. They're pretty non-seasonal.
Okay, no trouble. Good, good.
Right, everybody, I think we should leave this young fellow to himself. And while we drive away, please feel free to continue sending questions about him, but he's just not doing a great deal, so I think we'll carry on and see what else we can see. We'll try, of course. We might get stuck. Bryan, what I find is it's important to push the accelerator when you want to drive as opposed to the brake.
No, very
Yes,
nice.
that does help.
A good tip.
Yes. So, inevitably, you have asked, a few of you, Christine, Angela and Jody specifically, about whether we would help him if he was stuck. Chaps, or would we leave him to his fate? I think because this is a man-made dam, an anthropogenic effect would have caused him to be stuck. We'd probably try and help him. The thing is with a hip,
Are we going up?
Oh dear, we seem to have lost James, but we are back with you guys. Now, I'm sure that James will be back up and running soon. For those of you who were with us for the sunrise safari, it seems as though the gremlins are following Wendy in particular. Now, we're on a mission. This morning, James and Scott were desperately looking for those Birmingham boys, or we believe it to be the Birmingham boys. They had tracks of them up and down Triple M and then across Rebecca's Road. What we want to do is be in the position of the last tracks just around sort of sunset as it starts to get dark. The sun's just popped itself down over the horizon. We're going to go check all the way down Impala Road and see see if we can't catch those Birmingham boys calling. Scott and myself, just after the sunrise safari, we went out looking once again to the position of the last tracks, and we scoured the block. But it is a very, very big block, and it's also full of monkey orange. It could be, if they were flat out and asleep, that we walked right past them. Now we're trying to figure out what they've been up to and where they're going, especially in response to all of that calling from the salati males yesterday and last night. Chatted a little bit yesterday evening on Fireside Chat about why we think it is that all of a sudden the salatis have pushed down and made an appearance into Djuma, which to the best of my knowledge is probably certainly the first time it's happened since I've started working here. Now Tricia, you were wondering if the Birmingham boys would ever accept the salati males into their coalition, and I would say that's an absolutely not. You should never talk in absolutes out here, but I would say that would be highly, highly unlikely. Now, the salatis are in their prime. I saw clips of them with Scott. I saw them very briefly yesterday. They are absolutely enormous. They're very, very experienced males. They have competed and done their... Yep. Scott's just spotted something. No way. Hold on a minute. Oh, I think it's an African bard. Oh, but he is beautiful. Here you go, one of the little owls that we were talking about. And you can see what I mean. It looks like a pearl spotted now that I'm looking at it. Looks like it's got those eye patches on the back. That was a brilliant spot, Scott.
Thanks very much.
Oh, that was very fortuitous, having just had that conversation about the little owls that we see out here. You can see he also looks fairly grumpy. I think that's just his resting face, his neutral expression, but they always do look a little bit furious to see us. Now these little owls are really, really good at ambushing larger insects. So they specialize in catching the big crickets and so on that come out at night. And you'll see them dive bomb out of trees. I've had some of them land maybe 2 or 3 meters away from where I've been sitting in the evenings. Very, very cute. Just to give you guys an idea of how tall that bird is, probably somewhere in the region of 20 centimeters. And if you give my brain a moment to do some conversions, that is just under 10 inches in height. What's that, 2.5 centimeters to an inch? Yeah, it's under 10 inches in height. There you can see how really, really tiny it is. Beautifully silhouetted against that night sky. And if we look at it like that, in that shot, you can see what an amazing spot it was from Scott sitting on the back there, just perched out on the limb of a silver cluster leaf. That does mean we're still on a mission to find the Scops owls that have been residing. Oh! Quick poo. And all of these little owlets are, as I mentioned, crepuscular. So this is the exact time of day where they are most active, out and about, catching mostly insects, maybe some of the smaller rodents, but even that would be quite a challenge for a little bird like this. It only weighs a couple of grams. Very, very light and totally silent. Now, unfortunately, there is a vehicle behind me. I'm going to have to just shift out of his way so that he can move past. Oh, he seems content to wait for now. You can sit here for a little longer with a very cute little bird. One of the things that makes these owls so incredibly silent is the fringes on the edges of their flight feathers. So their flight feathers are sort of chopped up and broken, not extremely, but just enough to break or to sort of disrupt the airflow as it goes over their wings, and it just makes it that little bit quieter. You don't get the flapping sound that you pick up from some of the other birds. It's nice to just sit and enjoy the sounds of the African bush as we start to go into evening. I was sort of hoping that he might give us a bit of a call. You can hear a magpie shrike or a long-tailed shrike off in the distance making that beautiful whistle. And these little owls are hugely territorial, and they do call to each other to let each other know that they are in the area, which is why you've always got to be very careful when you're imitating their calls, because you can get them to respond and they will come right up to you. But if you do it too loud or too often, they might think that there's a bigger, scarier owl of that species, and you could actually scare them away. Now there's still some debate as to which owl this is, and originally I said I went from barred to pearl spotted, and now I'm going back to barred again. When he turns his head, he doesn't have those clear eye spots on the back. It was quite difficult to see because he's really in silhouette, but I don't see the clear eye spot patterns. So for those of you who are debating, Deb and Lisa, I'm going to go with an African barred owlet. He doesn't have that much white on his stomach either, as the pearl spotteds do. He's got quite heavy barring on his chest and on his stomach, which makes me think African barred owlet. He is very heavily in the silhouette of the sunset. And speaking of sunsets, I believe that Brent, who is out on bushwalk, would very much like to share his view of the sunset with you. And for now, we're going to cross across to him. We're going to continue our search for the Birmingham boys. And Trisha, I will get back to your question when we do have the opportunity. But for now, let's see what Brent is seeing.
Three. Surprise! Hello and welcome on the Sunset Bushwalk. Sorry, my name is Brent Leo Smith. Unfortunately, this is just going to be a very short cameo link. The African sun is setting behind us. Jandre and I have been out tracking the Birmingham boys, We have had their tracks going through the bush. It is getting a little bit late in the afternoon to continue tracking them, so we're going to jump back on the vehicle and see if we can find them popping up on the other side of the drainage line where we lost the tracks. So fingers crossed that before the end of the drive, we'll be able to find some lions. Unfortunately, not on foot, but hopefully able to find them from the vehicle. So just a quick hello while we're testing out the equipment, trying to get rid of all the kinks, so we'll be able to have bushwalks more regularly. So from Jandra and myself, just a quick hello. And I hear you had a wonderful pearl-spotted owl sighting with Jamie. We have sun and bees, but just to let you know, we're working on the bushwalk, and we will be continuing to work on the bushwalk, so it'll be up and running shortly. So from us out here on foot in the African bush, adieu, and hopefully we'll see you in the morning.
Welcome back, and we've had a beautiful view of the sunset, but it's now time to do some serious animal searching. Our little owl has headed off. We just had to pull off the road quickly for some passing vehicles who are on their way to the gate. Now let's continue our search for the Birmingham boys. Whilst I did enjoy my brief moment with you, I believe that James now has something to show you, so we will continue our search for the Birmingham boys alone, and James will be with you in just a few minutes. We'll catch up with you later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, where we have found a hornbill with the munchies. He is extremely hungry, been eating here for the entire time that you've been with Brent, and for some of the time you were with Jamie. And I don't know if you can hear, we'll try and turn the sound up a bit for you. You can hear the crunching noise. So eating out probably the big soldier termites that are making the crunching sound, and the others that he's just chucking down his throat are other ones that he's just, sorry, I'm just trying to turn this noisy camera radio down. The other ones that he's just swallowing are probably the workers, quite soft shelled and not as hard as the adults. And as Bryan pointed out to me, it looks like he actually cracked that termite mound open. You can see all the dirt from next to it, and he somehow probably figured out that this is where, maybe he just opened a hole up that was there already and made it a bit bigger. But I suspect that they can probably sense if the termites are close to the surface, and with that spectacular yellow-orange beak, he's able to open up the surface and catch the termites. You can see the droppings from various other birds all over the top of the mound there. So lots of termites have come. Lots of hornbills have come to sup on the termites here. There we go, I got it right eventually, Bryan. Sorry about that. And it's a beautiful evening. The sun has now set over the mountains, and in fact, while I was driving up this cut line, I became so inspired by the evening that I started to sing at the top of my voice some of the soundtrack from The Lion King. And unbeknownst to me, I thought we were alone in the wilderness, Bryan and I, but we went past a drink stop from Cheetah Plains with some very confused looking people staring at what on earth was coming past them. So that just gives you an idea of how magnificent this evening is. It inspired me to sing at the top of my voice. A couple of crested francolins calling, just a beautiful relaxed atmosphere around the place. There's not a lot of noise other than for the crested francolins and the gentle crunching of those termites as they go down the gullet of that beautiful yellow-billed hornbill. And also in the distance a red-crested korhaan. Hornbill didn't like that. Right, so I'll tell you where we are, everybody. Whoops, that's my head in the way. We are on the Cheetah cut line, which means we're to the far east of Djuma. Just came here to see if we could find some tracks of something or other. We haven't found any tracks of anything, so we're just going to continue north up here, see what we can pick up, pop into Buffelshoek Dam and see what's there. Unless anybody has a better idea, in which case I'm more than open ears for it. And just some Cokie Franklin's calling there. Cokie, 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 Cokie. Onomatopoeic name. Lots of birds have got onomatopoeic names. Sorry, Mr. Hornbill. You can come back if we disturb you. Sorry about that. You can also see that I'm now wearing a jersey. And I'm wearing this jersey because obviously it's become a bit cold, so I think we are still feeling the remnants of that cold front. And just before you left us, we were having a discussion about the hippo. I forget exactly what it was about the hippo we were discussing. Do you remember, Bryan? Oh yes, we were discussing whether we would intervene or not if the hippo got stuck in the mud. Now the general rule, everybody, is that if there is an anthropogenic, i.e. human-made injury or difficulty or stress to an animal, then we will help out. And if it is a natural stress, or unless the animal is endangered, we would leave it alone. Now that hippo is in a dam, which of course is man-made. That kind of mud would not be in that area were it not for that dam, and so I think we would probably try and help him out. Certainly, like I said, with elephants, that often there are elephant areas in Malawi and Zimbabwe and Botswana where we will try, and where I've seen lots of records of successful elephant rescues. I think hippos would be a bit more difficult though. Go quickly across to Jamie, who's got a giraffe off in the sunset, and I'll see you just now.
Yeah, that's affirmative, but we are going to lose them. I'll try and stay with them. Welcome back, and we just had to bring you across to have a look at the gorgeous silhouette of the giraffes that we did have just one moment ago. What I'm going to do is scoot forward. We've got the beautiful view of the Drakensberg mountain and the setting sun. Now let's see if we have one more opportunity to add a giraffe silhouette to the list. They are on the move. Get a little bit ahead of them. Hello Impala, you're here too. Just stop there for a moment. I think they're going to continue moving. But how cool is that? That is such an awesome, typically African image. With the thorns in the back and that beautiful silhouette of a large male giraffe. Really, really cool. You can even see his eyelashes. Beautiful African sunset image. I just need to get onto the Game Drive channel briefly so I can chat to Brent. He is calling us. Yeah, Brent's standing by. Brent for Jamie. Copy that, thanks Brent. We were actually on our way back to that area to follow up. We're on Impala Road now. I'll also head in that direction. Now, it seems as though once again Brent has picked up the tracks that we were desperately looking for earlier today of the Birmingham boys. They seem to be crossing Rebecca Road and towards the western edge of Quarantine. So we may well end up on Quarantine after all. We can have a look at the Birmingham boys and, if we're really, really lucky, even a little Scops owl. I think we better hit the road. It is getting late. Let's see what we can find. We leave these giraffe, there are a couple of questions about baby giraffe. So Gemma, you were wondering if there are any baby giraffe around because you haven't seen that many. And yes, there definitely are. I've seen a couple of really tiny ones. Nothing on any recent live drives though. And Heidi, you were wondering if giraffe will have babies once a year. And it will actually be more than once a year. Their gestation period alone is over a year, and they will continue to suckle their calves for a couple of months. There will be, although they don't have a specific breeding season, we will definitely start to see more giraffe now as we enter the rainy season. As with most animals out here that don't have that specific month where they give birth, you will always see a sort of peak towards the time of the year when there's a lot of rain and a lot more nutrients available for the mothers to feed both themselves and for those very rapidly growing and developing calves. Hopefully we will catch one or two on the live safaris very soon. And I love baby giraffe. Actually no, I did see one. I saw one fairly recently with the wildebeest on camera. And it was so tiny, it still had the umbilical cord on its stomach, sort of dried out, a little bit older, but probably only about a week old. Myself have quite the mission to go on, and we need to be in constant communication with Brent to see if we can split our or divide our labor, so to speak, and split up the search and organize all of that. I'm going to race across in that direction. So in the meantime, We're going to see what James has to show you and to tell you about, and we'll catch up with you a little bit later, hopefully with those Birminghams with us.
Link finished. Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy. We are now on the Buffels Hook cut line, just to the northern side of Juma. Sorry, I was just listening quietly. Now Patty, oh sorry, you're going to lose us briefly here as we go through this dip because there is some bad signal. Fear not, when we pop out the other side I will continue answering this question. From Patty in Michigan, who is about to make the long trip, the long trek over to Africa, to our very backyard here in the Sabi Sands. And Patty, you would like a task for while you are here, because you say you only don't, what, I forget exactly what you said, but you said something about only not knowing what you don't know. Something about that, like that. Anyway, I'm going to go through this dip and then I'm going to give you a task, Patty, which you will take very seriously while you are here. Your task is as follows. I would like for you, if you wouldn't mind, here are some buffalo. Let us look at the buffalo while I give Patty her task. Some beefies. A herd of bulls. A herd of bull buffaloes. They don't seem to be in a herd. So Patty, while we look at these buffalo, your task is going to be, please, to try and keep an accurate bird list. Now I think that will be interesting. I mean, I hope you like birds. If you don't, then you're welcome to tell me that my task is poor and you would like another one. But when you come out here in the next little while, the birds are starting to arrive back now from their wintering grounds in various parts of the world. And I think it'd be fascinating to see how many birds your ranger can show you in the time that you're here. I'd also quite like to know, Patty, where in the Sabi Sands you're going. It would be fascinating to know. So some bulls, buffalo bulls on their own, probably having left the herd that did come through here a little while back, or having come from the waterhole. I just don't know which waterhole they would have come from. So possibly old boys and possibly some marginal bulls who've come off the herd that was recently in this area. They're chewing their cud, and you could possibly hear just down below us, even though it's still quite chilly today, the cicadas now starting to call. Wonderful sound of cicadas heralding the coming summer. Hear the odd nightjar calling now. That's the fiery-necked nightjar, often called the litany bird, because apparently it's saying, "Good Lord, deliver us. Good Lord, deliver us." And you can see, obviously, darkness is now falling on the low veld of magnificent South Africa. And that picture, the light that you've got on that buffalo, is not in reality what we have here. The camera is producing that remarkable light. Yeah, I think these are old bulls that have probably come out of a dam somewhere nearby, probably on Buffels Hook, and they're just grazing along the fire break here. You can see that there are very few trees around where we are here, and that's because it's a clearing made for fighting fires should fires come. We're out of the danger zone in the fire season now because we've had our first 20 millimeters of rain, and generally that spells the end of the fire season. The but they'll like it because it's open and they can see what's going on. Beautiful color there, you can see. Gorgeous little orange stripe across the blue sky there. Right, I think we'll move forward now. The end of the road, if you just, Bryan, why don't you zoom into the end of the road if you wouldn't mind? There's that inviting, it's kind of, it just invites you to go and look over the edge there to see where that amazingly golden honey-coloured light might lead. Let's go and look, shall we? Isn't that beautiful? It's just so pretty. Marvellous, marvellous, Bryan, marvellous. Now, this is going to require a feat of some dexterity. In my right hand I have the radio. So while we're doing this, I might have to use my leg to change gears because there's quite a lot to do with my hands. And that's what I will be signaling to the final control as opposed to trying to talk to them. Or alternatively, I might just let go of the steering wheel and see where Wendy takes us. Is that a good idea, Bryan? Something tells me there's a flaw in it, but I can't think what that might be. Back, in fact probably about 6 weeks ago exactly, we planted an orchid in a tree just near Gowrie Dam, and I haven't been back to check it actually now for about 2 weeks, so I need to go and look, and if it does grow and if it does flower, it will flower at Christmas time, which is a wonderful time for something to flower. Beautiful yellow flowers with brown spots. So those of you who are worried about that, I'll go and have a look at some stage. I should go and do it tomorrow, perhaps tomorrow morning. I think I'll be on drive tomorrow morning. Look at that magnificent horizon. I think it might be worth another stop there, Bryan. What do you think? You can just see the mountains peeping up there. And I just want to stop and listen here. This is a roundabout where we thought those Salati males possibly went across the boundary yesterday evening, so I wonder if they won't call. It'd be nice to hear them.
Maybe in that small plot there, heading west towards Marabou.
Stunning. And you can hear some francolins calling. You can also hear the ubiquitous cicadas, or what are soon to be, or soon to become ubiquitous cicadas. For our younger viewers, perhaps you don't know what ubiquitous means. It means all around, very common, always seen, always found. Magnificent, magnificent sky. Unfortunately, no sound of lions, but there is also the sound of a white-browed scrub robin, which seems to be a little bit confused about the time of day. Beautiful, Bryan. Magnificent. Right, let us press on. Turn the side lights on. There we go. bush is now awash with light. There we go. Change gear with my foot there into second. Now, we've spoken quite extensively about trees while we've been out here with Bryan and I on the last few drives. This is mainly due to the absence of predators that we've managed to find, but trees are very interesting things. And Linda, in Canada, you want to know if there are sausage Kigelia africana. Linda, there aren't any sausage trees here. It's because we're not really wet enough. They tend to grow much more along riverbanks on perennial rivers, and that's where you'll find sausage trees. So because there are no perennial rivers on Djuma, we probably won't find it. Well, there definitely aren't any sausage trees here. You will find them in the camps though. People plant them, and there where the extra water comes from the camps, they tend to thrive quite nicely. Beautiful tree is a sausage tree, and for those of you who don't know, they produce an enormous pod, seed pod that looks like a big sausage, an enormous brockwurst, perhaps, knockwurst. Oh, Bryan, you smell death. I smell death. Let us have a listen in the smell.
Jamie and myself were here this morning.
Were you?
She couldn't find where the smell was coming from.
So there is a bit of a smell around here, and Bryan, as you may have just heard, saying that he and Jamie smelt it this morning but didn't find its origin. Well, if Jamie couldn't find it during the day, I don't think I'm going to find it at night. Anyway, something has met its end. There was a report later on in the day that a hyena was seen dragging something hapless and very dead into Biffel's Hook this morning, so that's what the smell is. So just back onto the Kigelia africana tree. Linda, you obviously know what it looks like, but for those who don't, it's got an enormous sausage-like dangling pod, and because it is I suppose its shape. It has long been used in Africa as an aphrodisiacal and enhancing medicine, if you like. A cream is made out of the fruit. It's not edible, but it also has beautiful red flowers that are fed upon by bats and in the night. Beautiful red flowers. Now, Jeffrey in Austin, Texas, you say there's a sausage tree near the pump house that we drive by. I haven't seen a sausage tree there. There is. Oh, I'm getting frantic nods from Bryan. There is a sausage tree there, Jeffrey. Where? Oh. Okay, so Jeffrey, that's probably because of the permanent water caused by that borehole. So thank you for pointing that out to me. I feel utterly ashamed that I didn't know that, and you, sitting in Texas, knew that there was a sausage tree next to a pump house that you've never visited before. I'm sorry about that. I shall flagellate myself on arrival home. Thank you for that, Jeffrey. Linda, we do get a sausage tree here at Djuma, as Jeffrey has very kindly pointed out to me. Thank you. What an imbecile I am. Well, I'll try not to. Now, an interesting question while we drive along here. eating things and tracking animals on foot and doing all sorts of things that many people in the world would probably consider suicidally dangerous, which in fact are not. Lyle, you want to know, do you need a special qualification to do what we do? You don't need a special qualification to do precisely what I'm doing now, but you do if you're going to guide people. So for a guide, you definitely need a qualification, and you can do it through various organizations in the country that are certified by the government. It doesn't guarantee you a huge amount, other than the guide has got a general kind of knowledge and has a vague idea of what's going on around big game. But it's certainly a situation that is much better than it was, say, 10 years ago, when there wasn't a regulation saying that you didn't have to have a qualification. You could just get on a vehicle and become a guide. So yes, you do have to have a qualification, Lyle, and there are various places that you can do them around the place. Now, Raisa says there's also a sausage tree around Juma Waterhole. I don't know about that one, and Bryan doesn't either. But Raisa, if you've managed to spot a sausage tree from Finland, sailed from here, I'm probably going to resign tomorrow and go back to the city. But I will go and have a look. And then another question about whether we get baobab trees here. I can comprehensively tell you that we do not get baobab trees here, and any of you who've spotted them from overseas, please don't tell me, because I shall cry myself to sleep. But I'm pretty sure, and I'm definitely sure, I'm 100% sure we don't get baobabs here. Right, we're going to hop across to Jamie, see how her tracking is doing. Tracking in the dark is an extreme sport, so we'll see how she's doing, and I'll see you just now.
And yes, tracking in the dark is indeed an extreme sport, as James so clearly stated. And the technique that we've decided to adopt in the dark is to come right onto close to the western edge of quarantine. And I just wanted to sit and listen and see if we can get a hint as to where those Birmingham boys are. I'm really, really hoping that they're going to be around here somewhere and that they're going to start to call. And let's just sit and listen quietly. And Lewis, if you listen really closely, you could hear those scops owls calling, and see if those are the same ones that you were talking about earlier. All seems to be very, very quiet here. Still no sign of those Birmingham boys. They were heading in this direction, so I wonder what they're up to. They have shown a propensity for sleeping quite late into the evening. I know that the sightings that I've been with them, they haven't made too much noise until quite a bit later and quite a bit after the sunset. And speaking about lions, and we have chatted a lot about them today, John, you were wondering if there's any news about Junior or the Nkuhumas. Now, to the best of my knowledge, Junior hasn't been seen since he was on that buffalo kill on Simbambili. And the Nkuhumas were on a kill in Torchwood. I haven't heard anything about them today. And of course, that's something that we all are really, really interested in. And as soon as we do know, we'll keep you updated on that front. I know that there were lots of guides out in that area this morning and they didn't pick up on anything. I imagine that the calls of the Salati males last night might have pushed the Nkuhumas away from this area. I think that they've had quite enough of new male lion coalitions coming into their area. They might have decided to duck away. And that moon is quite spectacular this evening. And just to finish up a little bit in terms of our conversation about lions, Monique from London, welcome to these live safaris. It is great to have you on board with us on the back of our vehicle. And you've heard that the Birmingham boys had killed and partially eaten a couple of lionesses, and we're wondering if this is a common behavior or if it is unusual. It does seem rather gruesome. It is indeed. It is not unheard of. I would not call it common, but it is not unheard of. I know that the Mapochos of a couple of years ago, a big male coalition, they were actually quite famous for eating or partially eating the lions that they had killed. And I think it's partly a way of displaying dominance once they have killed a lion. But also partly we must remember that they are not bound by human rules. They are wild animals, and they are opportunistic. And the lion is a possible meal and possible sustenance for them. But it isn't something that they regularly go around doing. Now, you will have noticed as we were looking at the night sky, there were lots of bats flying around. We're not seeing them as much anymore, but there were lots of bats fluttering around as Scott was giving us that beautiful shot of the evening sky. And RC, you were wondering if I could ID the bats. Now, just judging by their size, because they are quite large, I would go with one of the species of fruit-eating bat. They're much, much bigger than the insect eaters. There are so many different species of bat. I'm just desperately racking my brains for the most common one. Scott, I don't know if you can...
The epauletted fruit bat you do get here, but not very commonly. And that's the largest one that we may have been seeing.
Okay, so Scott is saying the largest one we might see is the epauletted fruit bat. There's one just in the back of my brain somewhere that I'm thinking of, but I honestly cannot remember the name, RC. So I do apologize. I'll have to go and brush up on my bat species. But I would definitely go with one of the fruit-eating, so the Megaroptera family of fruits, family of bats, rather than the Microptera, which is the small insect-eating bats. Now, as we're sitting and enjoying a wonderfully silent night, we're still waiting to hear from the Birmingham boys, and I know we are all at Inger's and DRC eagerly waiting to see if they do start to call in response to the Salati's challenge from last night. It has been a wonderful afternoon, and I do say a big thank you to all of you viewers for all of your help, and especially all of the information on the Marabou storks, which was absolutely fascinating. And a big thank you to Scott, who with his cameo as a cameraman, once again, it is great to have him on board with us, and also just to contribute to those little tidbits that I don't necessarily know just yet. And wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful evening. We're going to send you back across to James, and I will catch up with you tomorrow for the sunrise safari. Cheers for now.
Hello everybody, welcome back to this magnificent evening that is just showing us a quite astonishing view of the sickle, well not even sickle yet, sliver of moon, beautiful moon, which of course gave us a 79% solar eclipse in the southern parts of Africa yesterday, and in Madagascar, of course, which some people consider Africa and some people do not. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of a recap as to what happened today. For some of our new viewers, and for perhaps new viewers who weren't a part of, I'm going to turn this other radio off first before I do that. Perhaps you weren't with us earlier on during the drive, perhaps you've just joined us, you've just left work, or you're in a meeting. So what happened was, earlier today, Madiba, aka Sindile, aka Shadow's cub, caught a domestic dog, took it into a tree. There was great consternation. Brent went over there, not knowing it was a dog. He thought he'd caught a steenbok. Obviously, as soon as he got there, he realized it was a dog, and, well, so our viewers saw that. Now, there was a lot of consternation on Twitter about it, whether we should have showed it or whether we shouldn't have showed it. We did show it in the end, and we're very sorry if it did affect any of our sensitive viewers. Anyway, I thought I would just explain quickly again why it is that happened and how it came to pass that it happened. So, on the western boundaries of the Kruger National Park, there are 9 million people. Most of them live in abject poverty, and that means that from time to time there is the odd poaching incursion. Now, please understand that to come into an area like this and poach an animal for the pot is a very difficult thing to do, and it's not something that anybody, I know I've done extensive research in the communities outside of this reserve, it's not something that anybody does rather than go to the shops and buy something to eat. It's difficult, it's dangerous, and it's just not a lot of fun. And so those dogs may have been poaching dogs. I suspect they probably were, and that's how they got into the reserve, I suspect. Anyway, that's just the way it happens to be out here. Leopards are known for their ability to take domestic dogs in all parts of the world, and that's what little Madiba did. Now, the great thing about this is that we were very worried about what was going to happen to Madiba. The dog was dispatched by the Sabi Sands, as has to happen with any dog that makes an incursion onto the reserve, because of disease that could come from domestic areas where there are no veterinary services. And if the dog does test positive for a disease, especially rabies, what will happen is that Madiba will be darted, he will be inoculated, and he will carry on with his life. We were very worried that that wouldn't be the case, and that perhaps Madiba would have to be destroyed, but that is not going to be the case. So that is really very good news indeed. So that's basically what happened this morning, and that's why it happened. And feel free at any stage during the course of the morning tomorrow, we'll be on drive, to discuss it. If you want to ask any questions about it, please feel free to do so. But just understand that conservation land, especially in South Africa with our troubled past, is highly contested. There are a lot of very poor people in this country, mainly because of our turbulent past, and for various other reasons, of course. And a lot of those people live on the boundaries of this iconic wildlife area known as the Kruger National Park, and of course all around Zimbabwe and Mozambique, where the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, which the Kruger is part, extends. So we're part of an 8 million hectare of wildlife wilderness wonderland, and of course part of that wilderness is the human population of magnificent South Africa, beautiful Mozambique, and iconic Zimbabwe. So that's the story from today. This afternoon, well, it was pretty quiet. We saw a hippopotamus languishing in the mud. A couple of buffalo later on, not a great deal else really. We had some interesting chats about some sausage trees, and thank you Jeffrey in Texas for making me look like a complete fool by pointing out that we do actually have one on Juma next to the pump house. You knew that from Texas, I didn't know it from, 300 meters from the pump house, so thank you very much for that. I will go and investigate for further sausage trees. Big thank you to Bryan on camera today. Thank you, Bryan. Would you like to show your thumb?
I would like to.
All right, there is Bryan's thumb. Hello, thumb. Big thank you to Tara and Nikki in the final control for all of their patience with the radios that have been a little bit difficult on Wendy, but we managed to get through it in the end. And of course, a big thank you to Jamie, and Scott was on camera on Jamie's car. He's a very good cameraman, as old Scott. Big thank you to them. Mostly thank you to all of you. Continually I'm amazed at your knowledge, at the breadth of your interest, and I wish Patty a very safe and happy trip to the Sabi Sands, and I hope it turns out to be everything that you hope it will be. We will see you tomorrow morning during the magnificent African dawn that is bound to break somewhere around 5:45. Bye-bye, keep safe wherever you are in the world, and we will see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.